Okay, now that we have the front clip off, what we're going to do is set the engine to top dead center. Um, a lot of videos that are talking about replacing timing belt say you need some special tool. The thing is, I'm not only replacing the timing belt, I'm going to have to take all of this stuff off, like this cover off, this cover off. I'm actually going to take off the cylinder head, which means I don't really need a special tool for now. I might need it in the future, but I don't need it now. So anyway, to set the engine to top dead center, we're going to need to remove a few things. We're going to start off by removing the spark plugs. Then we're going to remove all these fancy covers so we can actually see the timing belt. So let's get her started. Usually there would be two screws here. Whoever worked on this car never put them back. So it should be fairly simple to take off. You just pull back, pull back. I need to get my screwdriver to make this easier. And of course the sun's coming out, so this is going to be very, very good for filming. I have excellent lighting now. And before we pull out the spark plugs, we're going to blow the valve cover off with some air. 5/8 socket to pull out the spark plugs. Now we're going to go to the other side. I'm going to show you a quick little thingy. So the process of removing the spark plugs on the driver's side of the vehicle, it's fairly similar to the passenger side with the exception of the coolant tank. You'll need to take off this bolt right here, and that's just a T20 Torx. And to get it out, you just pull up and out, like so. Okay, and since I'm right here, actually, I'll just show you the troubled, or the bad spark plug. So if you see, I don't have any water on this one. Second spark plug, also dry. And the third spark plug. I wonder if you can see that. And this one's actually, right now it's not as bad because I dried it out before, but this one was the wet one. Okay, so now what we're going to start to do is remove all of these fancy covers and some of these the serpentine belts and other stuff like that. And so this one comes off really easily. You can just pull up. That one's done. To take off the serpentine belt, you need some key for that. So you need a size 19. Push down. Now it's going to be a size 5 hex. So by the looks of this, we're going to need to take off the tensioner because the tensioner is right here, and we need to get this whole entire cover off. So we need to unscrew this bolt right here, and by the looks of it, those two bolts down there. We're going to use a size 6 for this guy right here. And then we're going to use a size 8 for this guy. Next thing we need to remove is this pulley here, because it blocks the cover. And it is size 6 as well. A little trick here is to use the belt. So it's not going to come off because we need to remove this. And I don't want to remove this until I have this thing set to top dead center. So let's put these two aside. To make sure that the cams are set top to center, we need to remove the lids. So I'm going to start removing this one right here. Okay, so to remove this cover, we're going to need to first get size 8, little size 8 key to get this, to get the dipstick free from the cover. Okay, that's gone. Now we're going to use Torx 30 to remove all these. $10mm bolt. And I think it's a good time to show you actually. Right here. I don't know if you can make that out, but that is like milky yellow oil. That's where the water's at. You can actually check right in there too. This guy right there has the same exact thing. So what I'm going to do now is take off the other cover. I'm going to do that off camera and I'll be back. Okay, so now they got both of the covers off. We're going to start turning over the crankshaft, and for that we need a 24mm socket, which is what I have right here. And now we're just going to turn it over by hand until our marks line up. And what you should notice here is that there's a little notch, and that little notch is supposed to align with this dot right here. So let's very carefully try to get it there. Okay, now that it's aligned right here, we need to go up top and look up top. And looking up here, I can tell you that it is not aligned. It's not top dead center because these lobes are supposed to be pointing each other. That's how you can get the tool on here. Right now they're not pointing at each other, so we have to do another revolution. So these guys are size 6. I've got everything marked up as much as I could. One thing we're going to need to do is compress this guy in, which is fairly simple. Might be a little bit bigger than size 6, will probably be a size 8. Can take him in here, turn him in, and he's down. Okay, so we're going to use a size 8. And this is going to take a few seconds. You have to give it some time to compress correctly. And now that it's compressed, I'm going to shove in my little thingamajiggy and release. And there we go. Very solid. Not a lot of free spin. We don't need to remove this, or a lot of things, for what I'm doing at least. I don't need to remove a lot of this stuff. So on the fuel rails I have 2 bolts here and 2 bolts on the other side. This is a size 5. To play it safe, I'm going to take off the clips. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So right here are the clips I'm talking about. They look like they just literally just clip in. You push something in here and pry it off like that. There's 3 of them on this side, 3 of them on the other side. guess if I wanted to, I can disconnect this fuel line right here, but I'm going to leave it on just for now. So here's my screwdriver, and voila, I removed one clip. Now what we have, what that was some gasoline. That is why you disconnect the battery, so you don't burn everything out. I need to just go do this, disconnect the other side. You need to unscrew these two 10mm. Now I can remove the whole thing. What I'm going to do is now is disconnect the line right here. I'm going to disconnect the electrical back down here. Using a 17 and a 14. Getting a little bit more fuel now, which means it's going to probably dump out somewhere. I wish I had my trusty sock here, but I don't. So now I'm going to disconnect the railings, the injectors I meant, and you just push down right here, pull it out. Okay, now we'll proceed to take off the actual intake body. Is to be careful of this thing right here. You have some vacuum lines, so you're going to need to keep those in mind while taking this off to make sure that nothing gets hooked up on anything. So now we're just going to take this slow and easy, nice and easy, and make sure that everything is going good, coming off right. There's about, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts on this side that need to be taken off. Not the best location, but it'll have to do. Let's try to pull this guy up really slowly. Okay, I see a lot of movement. Okay, so at this point, this whole thing's loose, but I will need to take off a few vacuum hoses to make sure that it comes off without any big problems, because there are a few vacuum hoses, so I'm going to start looking around for the vacuum hoses. Okay, so as of right now, here's what I'm seeing. We need to disconnect this wire right here, this vacuum line right here, and then there's another wire going to the back right here. Everything else looks like it's fairly all together, so let me quickly take those few things off and we'll get going. Okay, so I got the few wires disconnected that I noticed. I guess let's try to go for liftoff and see what happens. Everything here is okay. There's a line right here. It's probably going to need disconnected. So right in the back, if you follow this hose, it goes to right there. There's a bolt right in there. We're going to need to unscrew that and hook that hose. Let me quickly get that done. Okay, so a few more things I need to disconnect. I need to disconnect this valve right here. There's that little bolt right in there. Can't really make it out. Yeah, there it is, that one. That one needs to be unscrewed. And I did unplug this hose right here, which connects to right down in there. It connects to that hose right there, so I'm going to quickly unscrew that one. We'll try to take it out. Okay, so after playing around with it, I finally got it up enough to see what's holding it back. And right back there, I don't know if you'll be able to see those. Back there you can see one of the hoses, right? It's right here in the very edge. There's a hose right there, and there's one right behind it. Those are the two last hoses. I'm going to take those off, and this thing should be ready to be pulled out. Okay, so right here on the side, you actually have a much better view of the two hoses right there. Those are the last two hoses holding this thing in, so I'm going to disconnect one from where it's connected to the intake and one from the actual hose down there. Okay, So I disconnected the hoses, and now this thing should come out. Except that it didn't, because there's one more hose to unhook. Okay, so now that I got the intake body off, the next thing would be to remove the exhaust manifold, which is down in there. I'm going to save that for tomorrow because I'm done for today. Just put it that way. I'm done for today. Okay, so our next job is to remove the exhaust manifold. Right on top, we're going to need first remove the cover. We have two 12mm bolts, and then on the side, you should see two 10mm bolts. There's one right here, and then one straight a little farther back. These bolts are easier to get from under the car. So right here under the car, you can see the first bolt. It's right there. And the second bolt, you will be able to see from right here. There it is. You can see the second one right here. So you're going to need an extension to get into there, and it's size 10. So to get this pipe out of here, we trace it back up to here. And there's just a little clip holding it in right here. We're going to squeeze it, pull it out, and we'll get that pipe out of the way so we can have a little bit more room to work in here. Okay, so as you can see, I have the pipe out. It's all gone. Several things I had to do in that process. I had to pull out the dipstick, and I also had to remove this one bolt that went right here. I also disconnected these two wires since I'm going to disconnect them anyway. But now I have easier access to the actual head, and should be just pull it straight out, and there's the cover for that. Looking at the system, I'm not entirely sure what is the easiest approach to take it out because of the number of bolts there are. What I think I'm going to try is to try to take these off, and then if anything fails, I'll take off the actual take off the whole exhaust manifold off. So that's a 13mm socket we're putting on there. Okay, and to save you the boredom, at the bottom we have two more. There's one right here, and then one further back in the back. I'm gonna do these off camera just to save time, and I'll be back. Okay, so I got all these out. One thing I will point out is that the last bolt, it's a very tight fit, and you can't really get a socket over this. So what I found easy to do was to use like an 8mm, size 8 hex, and just plug it into here, and that helps a lot. It'll make it easier. So we got that plate off, and the exhaust is theoretically, unless I forgot a bolt or something, I don't think I did, it should be able to just come off. So I guess next thing to do is to take off the actual cylinder head. I disconnect these wires. I'm not going to disconnect this because I can reach directly into the bolts. Let me show you where the bolts are. If you look right down those wells, there are actual bolts in there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts right in there. And in theory, or at least the way I imagine this, I can pull the whole head off without having to remove the cams. I will have to remove them because if I'm going to be resurfacing them, the shop is probably going to require that I remove them. So, but anyway, let me get the special tool for that, and we'll get going. Okay, to remove the head, there are 8 bolts holding it in. The only downside is that you actually need a special tool for this. Right here, you see the socket? This is it's called a poly drive, 6-point bit, and this one happens to be a 10, size 10. There's size 12 and whatever, but you need size 10 for this. So we're gonna start breaking the bolts loose. We're gonna kind of go in. We're gonna start working our way from the outside and working our way in. You can tell we have coolant draining out from every possible hole there is, with the mix a little bit of oil, which is not good. Several things you will need to remove. If you look right here in the back, you have this pole here attaches to this some weird valve thing. I'm not sure what it's called. You need to take this off. I might just unscrew this or unclip that, whatever's easier. And finally, there's actually the actual coolant hose right here. Let me see if you can give a better shot. Coolant hose right here, and it attaches via, I think, 2 bolts, or at least I'm only feeling one. Actually, no, yeah, there's 2 bolts. 2 bolts. I'm gonna need to take those off, so I'm gonna quickly do that, and we'll put everything back, and then we'll see where we go from there. So right now the exhaust manifold's not letting go. Okay, so right now the cylinder head is off. Where it's, ooh, I should probably take this bolt out. It's a little bit in the way. Okay. Now let's try to take it out. Very, very gently. And, okay. Progress is good. Making sure all my marks are all still on. There we go. Got one head off. Now I guess you can see a problem here. That's from all the excess coolant that was left in the system. Got some sludge buildup or something. Good news is, doesn't look like anybody's replaced the head gasket before. So that's going to be replaced. I think right now I need to take care of that water, because that water's not good. So I'll get back to you once I'm done taking care of the water. Okay guys, so both of the cylinder heads are out. If we look through them, there is a lot of carbon buildup on this one. This one has a little bit less because I cleaned it up a little bit, but most of it is up here if you look right there. Very large amount, and this one's also got some carbon buildup. So, but one thing I found very interesting is if we go to the other side, if we look at this cylinder, the cylinder also had some water, so I kind of cleaned it out. There's carbon buildup on this one. There's carbon buildup on this one. And if we go to the third cylinder, there's absolutely no carbon buildup on it that I can visibly see. It's actually clean. It's like a little bit of oil. So this was the cylinder that was leaking. I've noted that earlier, and I mean, looking at this, I still haven't found where the leak was coming from. But this was the cylinder when I did this was the cylinder that had water in it when I checked. Let's go over to the cylinder heads. Okay, so this is the cylinder head. This is the one that was causing the problem. If we look at them again, there's one that's somewhat clean, and the others have buildup on them. This one that's at the very top, that's the one that was leaking. Again, I can't really make out where the leak was coming from. It's very hard to see, but for sure, I'm going to need to do more work on this one to get it ready for resurfacing. What I'm going to need to do is to actually take off all of this, take off the cams, because the shop isn't going to take it the way it is, so we're going to need to do some extra work before we're actually done. But in this video, I guess we got most of it. We removed the cylinder heads. It was a little bit of trial and error because I'm not entirely sure what I was doing. So I mean, looking at this, might have been easier if I had removed this hose right here and reattached it, but then looking at it, there's other hoses that go back, so I can't really say if the approach I took is right or wrong. Again, this is just so you can see what it's like to take off a cylinder head. It's not the correct procedure. I'm pretty sure there's other ways to do this, more efficient ways to do this, but this is just to give you an idea.